searching for parents, for the families of babies repeatedly online, including on Christmas Day. That's, I think, a bit weird.
We're talking about babies, by the way, who were in one case, certainly was only on the unit for 2 hours, and she was searching for those parents 2 years later.
This morning, Lucy Letby is appealing against her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl, for which she was given a whole life order in July. Just to remind you, Letby has been convicted of 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder of babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 16. Public interest in her case and the subsequent public inquiry remains high, partly due to online speculation that the conviction was not based on reliable evidence. But who really is Lucy Letby? Well, a new book, Unmasking Lucy Letby, by the journalists Jonathan Coffey and Judith Moritz, featuring interviews with those who knew and worked with her, traces her story from primary school to prison. And both Jonathan and Judith join me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess I'll start by asking both of you. Judith, you first. How did you first become involved in this story?
Oh gosh, years ago, before it was Lucy Letby, before the name was ever mentioned, my patch, I work out of the north of England, based in Salford, Manchester, and we got a call to tell us that there was the beginnings of a police investigation in Chester, around a spike in baby deaths at the hospital. That was 2017. So we went down there, there were sort of minimal amounts of information. At that stage, I think we just assumed that it was something to do with, I don't know what we thought it was. We didn't think it was a member of staff necessarily. There was nothing then at that stage to suggest that a nurse was under suspicion. A year later, they arrested Lucy Letby. I've covered it since then as a news story each time an arrest happened, through the trials and so on. And I didn't, if you'd asked me then whether it was going to unfold to where we are now, I'd have had no clue.
Jonathan, how about you?
So Lucy Letby went on trial in October 2022, and around that time or shortly afterwards, we decided, this looks like a panorama. This looks like it's going to be a big case. And that was quite sort of far-sighted of our editor, because the result or the verdicts were months away. So Judith and I started working, and we worked through that trial, very, very long trial, made a documentary, which came out on the day of the convictions. And then after that, we had so many questions still unanswered. We just thought, this needs a book. And we're still learning about it even today. I mean, the book's out, and every day is a learning day on this story.
And give me a sort of potted sketch, Jonathan, of what you've learned about Lucy Letby as a person over the course of this book. If you had to describe her as a person.
Absolutely. I mean, this book goes right back to Lucy Letby's childhood. This book tells you what about Lucy Letby bringing her dog to primary school, and what her dog's name was, and what her friends were like, and what they liked to do. And I must say that the more you delve into Lucy Letby's backstory, the harder it is to comprehend her crimes. That's not to say that we haven't come up with what we believe is a theory that would be consistent, assuming she is guilty.
Right. Okay. Judith, I mean, the doubts in this case, because there's no eyewitness evidence, there's no CCTV, there's no DNA evidence. What from the interviews you've conducted, is there anywhere where you can sort of end up still, as Jonathan says, still sort of making the case against her?
Gosh, this is the complexity of being able to answer that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this.
in a quick answer is it's impossible. I sat through the trial. Here's the thing. It feels currently like there are two parallel universes. That there's the universe of the criminal process, of the trial, of the appeals process. He talks about, that she's back in court today, appealing against that last conviction. So I went to the trial and the retrial, the appeals, and the public inquiry, which is running at the moment. I'm going there regularly. That whole system, the legal system, has decided, the jury have decided, 2 juries actually at those 2 trials have decided that she is guilty. There was enough evidence to get that case across the line on those charges. All of the charges of murder that she faced, she was convicted on. The Court of Appeal said that the judge had handled the case with exemplary skill, has found no fault with it. That's one world. The other parallel universe is the one that we've seen in recent weeks. growing up, these questions around the evidence in the case, the scientific evidence, the statistical evidence. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, I think, because of what you've just said, that, it was a case built on circumstantial evidence. And there are a lot of people who say, well, that, there are some who say that's not good enough. There are others who say, well, it's an acceptable way to present a prosecution, including, by the way, clearly the CPS. These are cases that they're used to doing, where there are multiple strands of evidence that they put together to make the whole.
When you go out to find out what somebody is like as a person, as you've intended to do, presumably what you're looking for is something that goes, yeah, that sounds like the sort of person who'd have done this. Did you find anything that one could describe in those terms?
And as John's just said, in Lucy Letby's background, I don't know what one expects to find. You look at sort of, other cases for comparison, and we do that in the book. We look at the Beverly Alec case. We look at other cases where you would imagine there's some parallel. And there are some parallels, but actually, Lucy Letby's childhood and background seem very ordinary. We did speak to Catherine Ramsland, do you want to get into that? Who said just because it's not there doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Catherine Ramsland is a famous criminologist. I think she interviewed Ted Bundy, and I emailed her right at the beginning, and she said, look, just because nobody's found it doesn't mean it's not there. It's not impossible to put together what we know about Lucy Letby with these crimes. It's not impossible, and this book seeks to do that. So almost by process of elimination. We know that she wasn't a thrill seeker. We know she wasn't a transgressor. We don't believe that she, had a serious psychiatric condition. So almost by process of elimination, you can sort of get closer to, well, assuming she did these things, what might it be? Our theory in a line is a bit weird, but actually it fits with what came out in court, and actually what we sort of road tested this a bit with people who know her. Assuming she's guilty, our best explanation of her motivation is that she wanted to impress people in crisis situations. She wanted to show how cool and controlled she was when, a crisis happened, or even maybe when a baby died. Now, those defending her will say, that's crazy, and the reason you're coming up with such a contorted theory is because she's innocent. Well, they can say that. So this theory is predicated on the assumption that she's guilty, and we don't make absolute statements on that in the book.
In the court case, they got into it to some degree. We saw, countless text messages that Letby was sending to other nurses, to friends, which were presented as, in some contexts, fishing for attention. But the prosecution didn't really, in any depth, get into motive and psychology. And it was one of those unanswered questions that we talked about at the beginning that, perhaps has fueled this fire at the moment as so many people are looking at the case.
Yeah.
There are definite flecks of weirdness. But again, if you assumed that she was innocent, you would just maybe call them eccentricities or...
Like what sort of thing?
Well, obviously, searching for parents, for the families of babies repeatedly online, including on Christmas Day, that's, I think, a bit weird. I'm not going to say somebody's guilty on the basis of that alone. Then when somebody is asked about it in police interview and says, I don't remember that, and I don't remember why I did that, then that does start to look a bit odd.
Yeah.
There are quite a few things like that.
And we're talking about babies, by the way, who were in one case, certainly was only on the unit for 2 hours, and she was searching for those parents 2 years later.
Right, yeah, that suggests a degree of obsession. Judith, watching her in court, what's her behaviour been like in court?
Fascinating, and part of the picture, absolutely part of the picture. And I think it's being missed, actually, out of a lot of this commentary at the moment. When we look solely at the science or solely at the evidence on paper, what's being lost is what it was like to watch her in court. I was there, but also what the jury will have taken from that. She spent months and months, and I've written about this in some detail because I was really focusing during a lot of that time on exactly what you've just asked me. What's she presenting? This is her opportunity during the trial, I thought, to convince us of her of her personality. Who is she? How is she going to present herself? Well, the answer is that for months, I mean, solidly for the first 8 months, she sat notably impassively, very little expression, very little reaction, and the evidence was harrowing, really harrowing. When she got into the witness box, 14 days in that witness box, she tied herself in knots. It was not, an experience, I think, in which she came out well.
Oh, look, we're very, very nearly out of time. Jonathan, in sort of 10 seconds, when do you feel this story will be over?
When Lucy Letby says she's ready to speak to Judith and me, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think Lucy Letby really has the answers to this.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Jonathan Coffey and Judith Moritz, who are the authors of Unmasking Lucy Letby. Thank